Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to A Dancer's Dialogue. It's been like over a year since one of these has happened, so I'm super excited to share with you all this morning. I'm here with Arianna babbaayyyy. Arianna, welcome. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here, girl. So good to see you and connect with you. So for everyone who is unfamiliar with you, Arianna, everyone, you can find Arianna either on her Instagram, or she has just started a really awesome Instagram platform called Dancers Anonymous. So Arianna, I'll just pass it along to you actually to explain what that page is all about, how people can find it, and how they can engage with the platform, how they can be a part of it, and really kind of your mission behind that page.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here talking to you. Okay, Dancers Anonymous. Yes. So Dancers Anonymous was started this year. I had the idea to kind of create a platform where dancers could tell stories that they otherwise wouldn't tell in a safe space where they're fully anonymous. So our entire storytelling process is completely anonymous. You just basically can either go to our Instagram or our website, and we'll link you to this form. And the form doesn't ask for any personal information or anything. All you do is write whatever part of your story you want to tell, send it to us, and we'll turn it into a beautiful graphic that my friend designs, and we will post it on both our website and our Instagram. And we've so far collected roughly 20 stories and put them out there in about a month and a half, which is really, really great. We're so happy to see the amount of engagement that we've had. And yeah, as far as our overall mission, I mean, we want to share these stories and kind of start a conversation about some issues that are maybe more taboo, less talked about, less comfortable for the dance community. But in the long run, we hope that the conversation will also kind of help spark some change and, maybe push the dance industry as a whole in a different direction than it's going right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So creating a space for dancers to talk about what they've experienced in the dance world, kind of more on like what kind of abuse they've maybe suffered that they haven't had anyone to go to and talk about until later, or they've had to leave the dance world for certain issues, or yeah, stuff like that, right? Like things that they maybe perhaps don't feel safe to talk about to their directors or their teachers or studio owners and stuff like that.
Totally.
In doing that, in creating this platform, have you come across some stories that were almost just like really shocking to you? Just like, wow, I cannot believe that this is actually happening.
Sadly, yes. I mean, I would say that right now, the majority of stories we get are about eating disorders and kind of pressures that have been put on dancers to lose weight, which are really, really tragic and sad and always hit me because I went through my own eating disorder when I danced professionally for a year. But you also kind of know about those a little bit more. It's one of those things that you're like aware of as a dancer, but no one really talks about it. So I would say those are shocking in their own way, but the ones that have been really shocking for me is like we had one story about a dancer who was in a company where the director was plagiarizing other works and putting it to different music. Yeah. I read that with my mouth wide open. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is so messed up. And like, what was interesting about that story too is that at the end of the story, the storyteller touches on the fact that as a dancer, you feel like you don't have a voice and like you don't have a place to speak up because like there are so many consequences to speaking up. Oftentimes we had another story sometime last month that was about a dancer who tried to help her colleague who was injured by learning her choreography so that she could teach it to whoever was going to replace her. And the director pulled her aside and said something along the lines of like, you way overstepped and this is not your place to do that. And she's like, I was just trying to help my friends. Like, I was trying to like take initiative and do the right thing to like save you time and money, essentially. And so those stories to me, even if they're not as like maybe deeply painful, like reading, a story about an eating disorder, those are the shocking ones for me because there's some weird stuff that goes on in dance companies. You're just like, is this real life?
Yeah.
And so those have been the stories that have shocked me the most.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just kind of shocking because dancers, I feel like, hold ourselves to such high standards. We are our own worst critics. We're so hard on ourselves. We're always trying to work hard and like show up and be better than we were yesterday. And then to have the people who are in positions of power and positions of leadership doing things like plagiarizing, like, come on,
Yeah.
like saying that, oh, you shouldn't work hard and try and like get this role and help out the company. Like, it's just so, what are we supposed to think if like us doing our best is, criticized, or that we're told all the time like, oh, you're easily replaceable, so don't speak up, don't speak out, don't say shit, because
Yeah.
your best isn't good enough, and there's always going to be something we can pick apart. And then you don't even have to come up with your own choreo, like, to become a famous choreographer. You can just steal from other
Yeah.
people. Like, what kind of message is that
It
sending
was
to?
awful. And
Yeah.
their whole justification too is like, oh, the locals won't notice. And it's like, oh my God, like, are you kidding me here?
Wow.
So
um
messed up. Yeah.
be careful, in the world of the internet, anyone can see anything, like.
It's out there now for anyone to see. So
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow, that is so crazy. So, yeah, for anyone watching this, if you have some story that you experienced in your time as a dancer that you never felt safe to share, or that you never felt like you were supported to talk about what you experienced, this is your opportunity to anonymously, safely put your story, put your experience out there, and maybe even create something that another dancer somewhere else has experienced, and to validate their experience and make them feel like they're not alone. So for anyone watching this, definitely go check out the page. I will link it in the description so you can find it super easily. But Arianna, I really wanted to talk to you, especially because, this platform that you've created really comes from a place of your own experience, and kind of trying to create a space that perhaps you maybe wished that you had when you were dancing. So would you mind just going into your background of like where has the journey taken you from, being a young dancer all the way to now, where you are, creating a platform for other dancers to speak out on the bullshit that they have experienced.
yeah, definitely. I'm happy to go into that. So I was pretty typical ballerina, bunhead, like ballet was my whole life. I spent all of my free time at the studio and just kind of passed my classes in high school to keep my parents happy. And I was like, this is it for me. Like, I'm not doing anything else. Like, I never want to go to college. This is like my whole life. And
Yeah.
even from the get-go, there was a lot of weird pressure around like, if you really love this, then you have to put everything into it, right? You have to give your whole self to this art. Otherwise, you're like not really a ballet dancer. And if you don't make it in a company, then it's like you don't love it enough to like sacrifice everything for it. So looking back now, I can see how problematic that was. But at the time, I was just like drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm like, yeah, this is it. Like, I'm doing this. And so I worked really hard and I got a traineeship with a company. And that year was just like so rough for me right after high school. Yeah, I ended up developing an eating disorder, like really, really restrictive eating, to the point where I lost way too much weight. I lost my period for a year. Like, I was unhealthy. Like, I definitely could have been sent to the hospital if I had stayed any longer than I did, but it got really bad. But it was one of those things where everyone around me could see that I was unhealthy, including my family, who was very concerned at the time. But artistic staff was like awarding me for it. Like I was getting to understudy big roles in the company and like getting big roles in the ballet in the final little show that we had at the end of the year. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, everyone says I look bad, but like artistic staff thinks I look great. And so like I must be doing something right. And so that was like a really complex issue in itself of just like hearing these messages about like, oh, the director likes thin dancers, so like everyone should lose 5 pounds before the show, things like that. You know, it was just like I was dealing with all of that. And then I kind of also slid into a bit of a depression. And I just was like, not like I had been my whole life, like someone that was at the studio early, like always there, working really hard. And I just started like having a hard time getting out of bed and like actually getting myself to go. And it was like a nightmare for me because like this whole thing that was my whole life that gave me so much joy and love and satisfaction now became like this source of like actually destroying my physical and mental health. And like rectifying that with myself was the hardest thing I've ever done and might be the hardest thing I'll ever do, because I decided like I can't do this anymore. I need to quit. And there's more to that story, but to, you know, my decision was ultimately I need to leave, and I left before the end of the season. Um, and so I went home and I had no idea what to do with my life because like I knew I made the right decision pulling myself out of that environment, because it was like, do I want my career? Do I want my health? And ultimately I chose my health, which is never a decision that like an 18-year-old should have to make about something that they're really passionate about, you know, but I made it and I put myself first, and I'm still really happy I did that. But it was like after that was terrible because I had no idea who I was or what I liked or what I wanted to do. And like I knew I needed to go back to school and like start something new for myself, because like I needed other things in my life to like make sure that I could be okay outside of this. And I wanted to know like, who am I outside of this? So I pretty much left dance almost completely for like 4 years while I went to college, and I ended up studying international relations and Italian. So like totally separate from ballet, like nothing to do with the ballet world at all. And it was really therapeutic for me in itself too, because it was like, oh, I'm good at this stuff. Like I like learning languages and I like learning about how things work in the world. And like it was totally like I didn't think about ballet at all. Um,
Mhm.
and that was great for me. And like now I'm working in that field more professionally. But this year with the pandemic, like a lot of my plans were thrown off and I had a lot of time to think, like everyone.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I, yeah, had tons of time to think. And
Did you
actually, I
start
started,
did you start to feel kind of like unresolved feelings around your experience in the ballet world start to come back up?
yeah. So I actually, my boyfriend's a photographer and he usually takes landscape photography, but he couldn't do that this year because he can't travel. And he was like, oh, maybe we could do some like dance pictures in nature kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, I could totally do that. And then I started, you know, putting the shoes back on. I'm like, oh my God, I'm back in this mindset. Like I'm thinking about dance stuff all over again. And then I'm sure you saw the whole thing that happened with Catherine Morgan last year. That came out and like all this stuff was coming out. And I was just thinking about it all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'm finally back in this mindset. I don't want this to be the future of dance for me or for anyone. Like I want to be able to just go and enjoy it. And so I kind of came up with this idea of like, if Catherine Morgan can share her story on her platform, then
Yeah.
other dancers should be able to do that too. But not everyone's afforded the same kind of protection that someone with a reputation like that can do
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
So
So many dancers are just trying to even get to a point where they can be in a
yeah,
company, you know? Yeah.
yeah. So it was like, okay, the way that we can do that is to talk about it without putting our names on it, because like I thought about me when I quit, if I would have shared all the stuff I went through openly, and I wouldn't have. And like even to this day, there are parts of my story that I won't share with everyone because they're very, very like upsetting. And, you know, to put the name of the company out there is kind of like condemning, and you can get into legal issues because they do things in certain companies that are like really unethical to their dancers, especially to their trainees. So, it's a dangerous kind of road to walk on, but I think it's an important one too. And I think that, if we talk about it, like maybe we'll never, have justice or whatever, but maybe we can change the future so that the next generation doesn't have to go through what sadly the majority of us have been through in the professional dance world.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if we can, you know, the younger, the like next generation of dancers who I feel like is the kind of audience that you are primarily reaching out to right now with your platform, like we need to bring that awareness up so that when we are the ones in the positions of leadership and the studio owners, the choreographers, directors, like principal dancers, whoever, that we are know what the stories are. We know what the consequences of the mindset and the actions and the habits and just the general like feel of the dance world right now, and like knowing what we don't want to do. Like we need to know what we
Yeah.
don't want and then start
Yeah.
like and shape this new environment. So yeah, what you're doing is so important, because you make such a great point that yeah, not everyone is Catherine Morgan, who's like a celebrated and loved dancer, you know, like
Right.
where like
Right.
there can be a lot of consequences if you're just trying to do
Sure.
a job, you're just trying to make it as a dancer in the first place, and you're already being told like, oh, you're disposable, you know, we can easily
Right.
replaceable. So it's like you're not going to speak up, and so many dancers just take it, they just endure the bullshit.
Yeah.
They just,
Yeah.
you know, they've put everything into it, and then like you said, it's this mindset of like, if you don't make it, it's because of you, it's because you didn't try hard enough and you are not a real
Right.
dancer. And like, whew, yeah, there's a lot there.
Hmm.
Which speaking of, I think it's a really important thing to touch on, of like that rediscovering who you are outside of being a dancer, right? Like if you've been in it your whole life, which I'm sure a lot of people watching this can relate to, like, oh yeah, since being really young, like been in it, drinking the Kool-Aid, that was their life. And it's very normalized, you know, for dancing to take over your social life, your everything. And because you love it and you just go so hard and put everything into it, that if something happens, like for me, it was when I got injured and I didn't leave voluntarily. I was kind of like forced to leave, and it
Right.
was terrible. I like fully had like a ego death identity crisis and was like, if I'm not a dancer, like who, I've equated all of my worth and all of my value to what I can do on a stage, you know, and I'm sure you experience that same thing of like, if I'm choosing to leave this world that I've invested so much of my time and so much of my energy and my well-being into, like, who am I really? What what do I do from
Yeah.
here? And
No,
just
totally.
I feel like there needs to be more of a reminding of dancers that like you are a human first and a dancer second. Like don't forget that you are your own sovereign, vibrant, unique, like multi-dimensional person outside of just the identity of being a good dancer and trying, you know.
Right.
So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
a little bit about like how did you overcome that, this from going 18, just left this trainee company completely, like what do I do with my life? Do you have
Yeah.
any words of wisdom or advice to anyone out there who may be going through a similar thing, of what helped you feel more themselves again and kind of rediscover who they are and who they want to be?
I mean, it's going to be a different process for everyone, I think. And the best advice I could give in that situation is just to be really patient with yourself, because there were so many areas of my life that I ended up realizing that I was kind of like behind in. Not that anyone's on a timeline, but like so many things I hadn't done growing up that like other people, like normal people, like we call them, just have done their whole lives. Like for me, when I decided like, oh, I'm really interested in what's happening in the world, and like I want to, explore different topics. Like the first class that I took that really got me interested was in this oceanography class, and the last lesson that we did was about plastic pollution in the ocean, which at the time wasn't really being talked about publicly. Now we talk about it a little bit more publicly, but at that time I was like, there are things going on in the world that we're not talking about and we're not doing anything about them, and like I want to help fix them, but I have no idea how to do that because all I've ever done is dance. So like I need to learn things, and like I was learning all these things in my classes that I felt like were really common knowledge for like the typical like history student are like, oh yeah, I got that. And I'm like, wait, I don't know any of this. So like I had to put a lot of time into studying and like working really hard, and I brought a lot of the work ethic that I learned from dance and the dedication that I learned from dance into something that I was like for me, for my personal journey, it was helpful for me to work on something that was not about myself, because I had spent my whole life working on myself, right? Like ballet is such a beautiful, wonderful art. But it is very like, you know, about yourself. It's like you look at yourself in the mirror and you perfect yourself, and you like your teachers are helping you, your parents are helping, like it's all like very consuming. And so it was really therapeutic for me to like be in a field where everything was about like what is happening outside of yourself, and like how can you be a part of doing something for the better. And that mindset shift was what really helped me kind of start moving forward, and it was what I would like thought of every day as like my motivation of like I'm doing something to help people. And
Mm.
now I'm bringing that energy back, that I've been able to step away from dance, build that and bring it back to the dance world, because I don't think I would have been able to do that if I had just stayed in it. I think like knowing myself, also like getting to know yourself, like I took so many weird like personality tests and like asking people like, so what do you think about me, like what am I good at, like just trying to figure out who you are. And it's really hard because it's like, you know, even just the term dancer to me is almost like a little bit problematic. And I had this conversation with my favorite ballet teacher I've ever had. She's like my best friend now. And we were talking about this, and she's like, I think I'm going to start telling my students that they are a person who dances instead of a dancer, because I feel like saying dancer puts you into this identity crisis of like, I am a dancer. That's it. I'm not a human. I'm not anyone else. I'm a dancer.
Mm.
And I think that that's just kind of problematic that we like label ourselves like that. And so I really like her approach that she's bringing, and she's watched me go through all that I've gone through, and she's changed a lot of the approach that she has to teaching based on what she's seen happen to me and her other students. So I think that's really beautiful. But you know, just changing that mindset of like, this is who I am versus this is something I do and I can do other things, like it's so empowering because you realize like, oh wow, like I'm capable of so many other things. And you know, it's great.
Yeah, oh, I love that. Like, I'm a person who dances, but I'm a human first, dancer second. Like, I'm a whole person on my own, and I also love to dance. Like, but dancing isn't all that I do.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Big deal.
Seriously, if we could all start to say like people who dance, I'm a person who dances rather than just like my identity is a dancer. Because if you lose
Yeah.
or that changes or for whatever reason that drops off and that's been your identity your whole life. Like what do you do when people are like, oh, what do you do? And you're like, I'm a dancer. Wait, what am I? Who am I?
I'm not a dancer. I know. Like every time you have a conversation, you just have like an existential crisis. Like it's happened to me for like 3 years.
Like I'm a person. I don't know.
I do I do things, I swear.
Do things. Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm going to start using that for sure. So it seems like what really helped you was just like getting out of the bubble of ballet and kind of like getting out of that tunnel vision of just like, I'm a dancer and I only do dance things, and really
Yes.
like trying new hobbies, finding new things that like it is kind of in a way it's really really hard, but it is a really interesting time because you kind of get like a clean slate almost of like, okay, if I'm
Yeah.
totally stepping away from this, what else is there to step into? What else do I not even know about myself that I might love or be like really really good at that maybe like I never would have gotten a chance to even find out about myself if I had stayed in that dance world, dancer mindset. So yeah, so it seems like finding something new to spark your interest and expanding your view outside of yourself and seeing like, you know, instead of just me, because there it is a very like kind of singular experience as a dancer. Like yes, you dance with other people, but you're ultimately you're trying to get that solo. You're trying to be like you're
Right.
trying to be you on your own journey, and to kind of be a part of like the greater whole. Like how can I give back? How can I be more involved in things greater than myself? Like how can I remember that we are just on a rock hurtling through space and I am like made of stardust and I have a human out here and so much more than like how skinny I am or like how much one
Yes.
director likes my
Yeah.
you know, like my
Yeah, it's like, I think doing those things, like you realize how superficial it is. It's like, oh my God, like all I cared about, for me at least when I was a trainee, it was like, how thin am I? How high is my leg going? Does the director like me? It's so like, oh my God, that's so superficial. Like you're so much more than that. And like to the point that you made earlier, also, I don't like, you don't even have to like completely leave. Like I completely left because I had health problems that I had to deal with. And I'm glad that I did that. But like if you're watching this now and you're like still kind of trying to figure out like I'm not ready to quit but also I'm not happy, like you can definitely do those things while staying in it, but like, you know, giving yourself a new perspective. And like quarantine has kind of been a great time for that if you're in a stable situation. But it's also been very difficult because I feel like it's really polarized dancers. Like some dancers have been like, okay, like I can take a break now and do other things, and like the world outside is there. And then other dancers just got like even more into the bubble, you know, like, okay, now I'm at home, I have to like train like every day, all day. Like, so, you know, if you're like struggling with that, then I feel like the best thing you can do is kind of just like make a little bit of time for yourself each day to like not be a dancer. Like just pretend like you're not a dancer and like do something else, because I think that could have like honestly saved me and like allowed me to have maybe a bit of a longer career if I was able to deal with that, and also, you know, have like value outside of that, because I think a lot of it came from feeling like that was my entire source of value, was that.
Yeah, exactly. And we have both left the dance world for a period of time and then come back into it in our own ways. So, yeah, for anyone watching this who maybe you had to leave either from injury or for like health, mental health reasons, and you're feeling really called, like you miss it, you want to like come back into it, it is entirely possible to come back into dancing with new mindsets and new way of move. Like for me, it was all about finding new ways to support my body so that I could dance and with my injury, which is like a lifelong injury, but like be able to work around it and take better care of myself and listen to my body, create an entirely new relationship with my body. And for you, like coming back into it with, we were talking the other day, and it seems like it's just more joyful for you when there's not like, this is literally your career and the only way you're ever going to amount to anything. Like,
Yeah.
you
So
know,
much healthier now when you can choose to do it and just enjoy it. And like for me, I do like a lot of now dance photography with my boyfriend, and that's like a fun thing for us to do together. And it doesn't feel like scary, I have to look perfect in these pictures. It's like, no, I'm doing this with someone I love and I enjoy it. Like it's, you can bring it into your life in so many different ways than just like I'm a professional dancer with ABT. Like you don't have to, that's not like
that's,
the only
yeah.
measure of success. Like,
Mm-hmm. And just to give people permission to be like, yes, I'm a person who dances, even though I'm not doing it professionally. Like there's so much imposter syndrome, especially
yeah,
that I noticed even in my own clients in my program, Yoga for Dance Academy. They sign up for Yoga for Dance Academy, and sometimes they still question, like, can I even call myself a dancer? Like, I'm not doing it professionally. I just do it for fun because I love it, or like, I had to leave it for an injury, and there's so it's like you can, you know, it's not just for the people who are like so serious. You can only call
yeah,
yourself a dancer if you are like giving your entire life and soul into it and like going the professional route, you know, like
hmm
have dance in your life and have so many other things in your life as well. And I think that's just a really important thing for all dancers, whether you are just starting now and doing it for fun and like discovering this thing that lights your soul on fire, or someone who's been dancing their whole life and needs like a new like invigoration into their craft. Like, you are such a multi-dimensional being. You are allowed to embody so many different aspects of yourself and to own it too. Like, you are a person who dances. Like, just because you're not doing it professionally, like, you absolutely are, and you can own that and claim it and like let that empower you, rather than being something that's like, this is the only thing that I am. I think a little bit both ways. So, oh, wow. Yes, Arianna, thank you so much for sharing. This has been such a really good conversation, and just such great things just to bring up about dancer wellness and mindset, and really getting to creating more space to like allow yourself to be more than just putting all your eggs into the one basket of being a dancer, and to expand like your energy and what you put yourself into, and to give yourself permission to do that. And so thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for creating the platform Dancers Anonymous. Everyone definitely go give it a follow, put your stories on there, and this is going to grow so much. And it's really important right now for all of us as we are taking leadership roles, growing up, stepping into more like roles of power as teachers, performers, directors, choreographers, to be a part of the conversation. So, Arianna, thank you for being a part of the conversation. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you. Bye.